Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Monday, May 12th, just after the Toronto Blue Jays completed their second sweep of the season, going into Seattle with vibes about as low as they could be, coming out with 3 huge wins as the offense explodes. They get some good bounce backs from their bullpen. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, how are we feeling as the Blue Jays flipped seemingly the season on its head in Seattle?
Back to 500. You can get that back in the books. They are good again. The Blue Jays are good again. They've won 4 in a row. Things are going well. Sweeping in Seattle, as they say. The vibe's much better than they were just a few short days ago when they couldn't muster up anything against a lowly Angels club, which we'll get into maybe in a little bit. But first, let's have let's celebrate a little bit. Nice series win, nice series sweep over the Mariners, first since 1991, before they were World Series champions. And thanks in large part to contributions up and down the lineup, mainly down the lineup.
Yeah, really interesting group of games for the Blue Jays. I mean, obviously you come in without Anthony Santander. You weren't really sure what you were gonna get from him, like how much he was gonna play, and he's kind of out of the lineup. And then all of a sudden, you get explosions from Addison Barger. You get a great Miles Straw series. George Springer pops off as well. It was just a really, a culmination of I think everything that you kind of wanted the Blue Jays to be doing. At this point, it's kind of was similar to the way that they were winning earlier in the year, where they were getting contributions from everywhere. They got some solid starting pitching. They got obviously the big performances from the guys at the bottom, like you mentioned, and then the bullpen, who completely imploded in Anaheim, kind of finds their way back. And you get the big Mason Fluharty performance. Jeff Hoffman looks good again. Jimmy Garcia kind of almost blows that one game, but finds his way out of it. I think as far as vibes go, it was just a completely altering series, and it's one that you hope that they're able to kind of build on going forward.
Yeah, who knows how real a thing momentum is
Only
on
as
on a
good as tomorrow's starting pitcher.
pretty much. But 4 wins in a row feels a lot better than 4 losses in a row.
Yes.
And 500 feels a lot better than under 500. And 3 games out of first feels a lot better than 6 games out of first. So this is exactly what the doctor ordered for the Blue Jays to go into Seattle. A good team, a legit team, a team that they had trouble
They've
with
won
earlier in
nine
the
straight
year.
series in a row. The
Yeah,
Mariners
this
coming
is
into that
this
one.
is this is not a bad baseball team that they went and took advantage of. And they obviously, they didn't catch some of their aces. They missed Brian Wu, but you still got Luis Castillo and you still took it to him. And you still got Bryce Miller and you took it to him in a lot of respects. And it was their best offensive showing of the entire
Yeah.
season, popping 9 runs. So for the Jays to go out and have their offense explode in this kind of way is exactly what the Jays have been looking for. Not to mention, by the way, the defense continued to be fantastic. Dalton Varsho makes an incredible grab in center field. Miles Straw makes a couple of great grabs over the course of the series. It's, ho hum on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
But when the offense shows up, when the offense is productive, this is a team that looks a lot more compelling than the one that has looked like the Blue Jays of 2023 and to a greater extent 2024.
Well, it's kind of funny too because I mentioned no Santander, and Vladdy goes 2 for 12 in the series with 2 singles and 3 walks. And it's kind of well, you know, you kind of look at that, and we kind of been pounding the drum of those guys are going to be the ones that get them back into the season. And it turns out to be Addison Barger, who I think we can kind of do a little bit of Addison Barger love, because he was kind of the driving force, right? He ends up in the 3 stick for Sunday's game. He goes 6 for 13 in the series, 3 doubles, a homer, just really obviously effective, but for a guy who there's been much debate about online, and just the way that he, you kind of felt like he was coming the way that he hits the ball, right? There had to be better results for him eventually, the way that he does, get into some of the elite batted ball
There's
territory.
not that many other guys that can run into a ball like him.
No, I
He's
think he set his new max EV on one of his doubles, and it was he's now, top 10-ish, or he's 12th in baseball in max exit velocity this year.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put you on blast here a little bit, and I'm sorry to do this to you. but last Thursday, sent a little tweet in the group chat. Uh, was Jordan Walker, if I recall correctly. Bat speed is like 100th percentile, and everything else looks like crap. And then you basically went, if Addison Barger chased like this, he would also be like this, a guy that swings the bat like a maniac and
Well,
doesn't do anything with it. And since you sent that ugly and hurtful message to me, because I was personally offended by it, and so was Addison Barger, he proceeded to go. This was up until his homer. I actually don't know. I don't think that was his last at bat of the game. I think he had other at bats, so I actually don't have his full stats. But between that comment and his homer, he'd gone 6 for 16 with three doubles, a homer, and a 1.194 OPS. So this guy has turned it on, took personal offense to you disrespecting him.
I mean, he hadn't, gotten very good results leading into this weekend. But
And yet, and yet, Addison Barger right now looks like the best hitter on the Blue Jays right now. Dare I say it? He
do
looks like maybe
you
not the best hitter on the Blue Jays on in a broad scheme of things, but in terms of just pure hitter, pure hot hitter, he's the guy right now. Like you can't take him out of the 3 or the 4 hole right now. Even when, Santander's back, I think that you're keeping him up there at the top of the lineup.
yeah, I mean, like for a guy, I mean, I think I'm pretty firmly an Addison Barger fan. Like I think, the tweet more sent or the text I sent more in jest than an actual commentary on Addison Barger's abilities as a hitter. But I think, you kind of look at what he's done this year, and it is like really impressive the way that he has shown an improved command of the strike zone and kind of cut his strikeout rate down and kind of looked more like the hitter that we saw in AAA. And I know that like you kind of look at I think for a while at the beginning of the year he's just like hitting the ball 1,000 miles per hour like at guys. And like some of that will certainly come back. Like I don't think he's going to hit 470 every weekend, but yeah, he's definitely a guy with the tools and his ability that you kind of want to have in the middle of your lineup, right? Because he's going to be smoking the ball all over the place like he was this weekend, and I think that he's kind of showing that he is here to stay. And because there was some of the debate when Dalton Varsho came back as to who was going to get sent down, and obviously it ended up being Will Wagner, and I think that Alan Roden, of course, as well. He gets sent down before the Angel series, and we haven't spoken since then. But I think it is nice that they kind of stuck with Barger, just kind of looking at how he was hitting the ball and some of the gains that he had shown with his plate discipline. I think like kudos to them for not reacting super quick to the poor results that he had early on and being able to kind of stick with him. And then you get to reap the reward this weekend where he just goes completely insane.
Another thing I think also super interesting, super compelling in terms of the way that the Jays shake out as an org. It's your third baseman right now. And that might be your third baseman moving forward if he continues to hit like this. Obviously, the defense is not going to be as important as the other aspects of his game, but this guy right now looks like a third baseman. And so that obviously shifts Clement over, and we'll see what happens to Clement. But because of the Jimenez injury right
Yeah.
now, he's playing second. But where does he slot in? Is there any Clement right now about to see his playing time affected by this Barger breakout? Is Clement going to displace a guy like Bo Bichette? Is Bo Bichette going to maybe pick up some more DH games? Because let's be real here. If we're just talking about the defensive side of the ball, Clement is the far more capable defender. He's a Gold Glove level defender at third base and a more than capable one up the middle. So at that point, how do you get, does Santander move to the DH spot? Does Barger flip back to right field? Well, he's having a lot of success at third base right now. Do you want to, change things for Barger? And now all of a sudden, there's a lot of machinations that it seems like are going to, as a domino effect, be falling in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, you've got a while until you've got Jimenez back. He's on the 10-day IL. I'm sure he'll be back in the next week or so. But still, changes the way the Blue Jays are structured in the immediate term for sure.
Addison Barger at third base has one DRS and one OAA in 59 innings, which is good.
Like he's a
So,
capable third baseman.
yeah,
He
like
he
I'm,
came up as a shortstop originally and
yeah,
then shifted over. So it's not like he isn't a capable defender. And at the corner, right? He's not really an outfielder, and they put him in the outfield because he's got this electric arm, which take advantage of for sure, but he's probably more comfortable as a third baseman. So it kind of becomes this, you know, cat and mouse game of once again, you got a million infielders and you got to figure out where to put everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think once Jimenez comes back, like I think there's a pretty simple opportunity to platoon him at third with Ernie. They've protected Barger from lefties so far. Like he's only gotten 7 plate appearances against lefties so far, and he's gone, 1 for 7 with a double and 2 strikeouts. So like it's not, like total red flags. Like 1 for 7 obviously isn't great, but only 2 strikeouts, I guess, you know, you it's not awful. It's not like he had 5 strikeouts in 7 at bats against lefties, right? But when if you want to look at like what Ernie's done, like Ernie has a 161 WRC plus against lefties this year, and Barger has obviously excelled against righties. He's 12 for 47. That's a 255 average, and then of course he's gone to some power for a 117 WRC plus against righties. So like I think that's your solution when Jimenez comes back. You just platoon Ernie and Barger at third, and then maybe over time, you get Barger a little bit more reps against left-handed pitching, and you kind of do it that way. But for now, I think you kind of lock him into the middle of that lineup, and maybe even give him some more reps against left-handed hitting because this is a guy who traditionally hasn't been a huge platoon profile type guy, right? And maybe that's just because in the minor leagues, you know, there aren't a ton of great left-handed pitchers in the minor leagues because great left-handed pitchers rise to the majors very quickly. So something worth watching, I think, with Barger to see how he does kind of fare in those left-handed matchups. But for looking at like the machinations of those guys, like I think you give Barger the big side of that platoon because he's been fine defensively, and then you let Ernie handle the lefties there because he has been so good against them this year.
So if that is the case, do you eat into Jimenez at all to try to get, because again, Jimenez another lefty, right? Like, do you try to get maybe Ernie in there against guys as a second baseman, and maybe you trust Barger's bat a little more, or maybe even you shuffle maybe Jimenez over to short to give you some value from there, even though he hasn't played short for the Jays yet this year. I feel like there's more movement to be made than just platooning that pair because I think that the optimal lineup, you can shuffle some guys around. That's the
I
whole idea of this Blue Jays team.
I think Jimenez is not going to be losing playing time when he gets back.
You don't think
Even,
so?
well, I
Even as the
mean,
struggles.
I mean, it is who he is. Like it's been a little bit worse than I was expecting. Obviously he has the first week of the year where he goes crazy, and then the kind of the fall off, right? Like he was the cleanup hitter for the first 3 weeks of the season, and now he's like locked into the 9 hole. But again, like I mean, it's a guy who you are paying $20 million a year, and again, like I don't love like the sunk cost fallacy argument of like playing time, but there is the fact that they like traded valuable assets for this guy and he is like an all-world defender, right? So I think that it does kind of when he like they haven't shown any willingness to like take him out of the lineup when he's not hurt, right? Like he's been in there good or bad and kind of locked into to playing time at second base, I think.
I don't think you can look at it that way. I think that it was a gamble to go out and get him to begin with. And the upside was undeniable, but maybe you just got your lunch money ate.
But
And
like what would I do? Like I probably, probably wouldn't have made the trade in the first place. But I think like what they're going to do is he's going to play second base when he's healthy.
I just don't think you can lock him in there if you've got better hitter. Because the problem with the Blue Jays is that they're struggling for offense.
I mean, but
And
also
if
like
you
if you're debating like Ernie Clement or Andres Jimenez play
no,
like for playing time
but
at
you're
second
not
base.
no, but you're not necessarily debating that. You're debating Ernie Clement against lefties at second base to keep Addison Barger in, even though he hasn't really done much against lefties this year. He's been protected from them by and large, and the upside on a Barger bat is leaps and bounds ahead of where Jimenez bat is. Like I would almost rather you platoon, maybe you look at platooning Clement and Jimenez to try to give Barger those chances against lefties. That to me is the more compelling option because, you know, for Jimenez, even if you're spending all this money on him, I don't think that he's a guy that should have a hammerlock on a starting lineup spot despite his payday. Because now all of a sudden, if Barger's going to continue to be a guy that can be like a 850, 900 OPS guy, because obviously this is not what he is this, 1100 OPS weekend. But if he's going to be mashing baseballs like he was this weekend, he's going to continue to have success. And that's not a guy you want to take out of the lineup.
Yeah, and I think like if you give him the big side of the platoon at third base, like he's in there most of the time. So I just think like the gains that you're going to get between Jimenez and Clement, like it's just kind of marginal, right? Because you're not going to see left-handers all that often, anyways. That's small side of the platoon stuff. So like I guess it makes sense. Like if you want to do that, then like you take Jimenez's opportunities against lefties because you're not going to be taking him out of the field that often then. But I mean, for a guy who can't believe I'm saying this. For a guy who has been as bad as he is offensively, he's still been a positive contributor based on his defense and base running.
I just don't know if I just defensive stats are fake, brother. We've been talking about this. I can't believe you're the defensive stat
I
defender
know.
today.
I know.
What a world. Beyond obviously him being hurt, obviously, which is I think maybe framing the discussion a little bit. I do actually want to, I mean, we gave Barger some love, but um, just want to give him a little bit more love because it feels like this has been a long time coming for Barger. This is his third go around to the big league level, if I recall
Second, but
correctly.
it's been like because in
There's been a couple up and
2023 there was
downs.
2023 where he was like he was like the breakout of spring training, and they were kind of like, oh, can Barger break camp with the team? And then he never made it to the big leagues in 23. And then last year, yeah, he gets called up, and then he gets, I believe, yeah, you're right. Like he
Yeah,
did
there
come
were a
up and then
couple
get
up
sent
and
down last
down.
year, and then brought back out.
Yeah, so listen, maybe it's not his third year, but certainly he's had more than just this is not his second shot at a big league job.
Yeah.
And he's clearly made adjustments. He's clearly improved what he's needed to improve. I mean, you've talked about the K rate coming down. This is a guy that's putting the bat on the ball more and hasn't sacrificed the hit tool because he's putting up career best exit velo numbers, right? If he's going to continue to rush the ball like this, I mean, you look at his homer, right? Like that was a line drive shot. That
Yeah.
wasn't a towering moonshot. This is not a Dalton Varsho type that's going to pull the ball in the air. He's going to pull the ball maybe, but he's going to hit that thing on a rope. And if he's going to continue to hit the ball on a rope like that and just, hammer it into the right field corner every, 4 or 5 at bats, that's going to play.
I mean, he's third in baseball in average exit velocity, like behind Shohei and O'Neal Cruz. It's those two, and then it's Addison Barger, and then it's Aaron Judge, and then it's Rafael Devers, and then it's Pete Alonso, and then it's Gunnar Henderson. Like those are all like MVP candidates, right?
The
Like it's
upside
it's
is
just
just
it's just
immense.
crazy, and it's kind of the thing that you feel like this team has really been missing over the past couple of years, right? Because you look at like some of the other guys, Ernie Clement, Miles Straw, like the guys who have been getting a lot of time at the bottom of the order, even Nathan Lucas to an extent, right? Like he's been great. Like I think he's got the second highest WRC plus on the team this year. But like this is like peak Nathan Lucas,
This
right?
is like dad
Like
power Nathan
I don't
Lucas.
know. Well, the dad thing too. Yeah, he's on his Fred Van Vliet grind right now. But
Is Mitch Marner, well, maybe not
well,
Mitch Marner.
um, yeah, I think like this is the peak of what you're gonna get out of Nathan Lucas. Whereas for Addison Barger, like yes, this weekend would probably be like up there for like single best weekends
Single series? Yeah,
that
I
he'll
would say
have in
so.
his career. But like, for what he's done this season, like you just feel like there is so much more. And like, it's interesting because like guys like this aren't top prospects or anything like that, but there's just so many tools there that you feel like, it is a positive contributor. And like, is it going to be an all-star? If you place the line at zero point 0.5 career all-star appearances for Addison Barger, Like, would you take the over or the under? Like, you probably, gun to your head, probably take the under. However, um, let's say this: if you took the over on 0.5, I feel like you would feel pretty good about like taking the over on like 2.5 because that means that something clicks, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where it's like the talent ability is like of a multi-time all-star,
Well, we
but
we
they're just
talked
as
about this with Thomas a few weeks ago that
yeah.
of all the tools up guys, he's the guy, he's the handy manny of the group for all you Disney Junior heads, you know. He's the tools up kid. He's the guy with the stuff to be an impact player. And the Jays have really lacked that in terms of guys coming through the system. And there's guys in the low minors. We'll actually talk about Arjun and Trey Yesavage and the rest of that group in a little bit. But in terms of high minors guys with upside, is it anybody even in the same universe as Addison Barger?
There's like Irrelvis, but there's like there's a total difference in like what their abilities are because Barger has obviously shown the ability to hit the ball maybe a little bit harder and less strikeouts than Irrelvis. So, you know, at the high minors, like it's definitely Barger is definitely kind of the cream of the crop, I feel like at this point.
It's a totally different group.
Let's talk about somebody else who has been maybe the most important contributor to the Blue Jays this year, question mark, George Springer, who has another big weekend in Seattle. And, for a guy who we were talking about in spring training, like, is he going to get cut? Is he going to get Jose Abreu'd? For him to now be, we were talking before we hit record, like, he might be an all-star this year. Like, he's the second in qualified American League outfielders in WRC plus.
Let's have that conversation. What does George Springer need to do between today and June 1st to make you comfortable saying he will be an all-star? Does he need to be like a league average hitter the rest of the month for him to be in that all-star discussion come June 1st? Maybe slightly better than league average?
Probably a little bit more than league average. I mean, you kind of look at the group of guys that he'll be competing with. It's him, it's Judge. Well, Judge. We can lock Judge into an all-star spot. I think Springer isn't competing with Aaron Judge for an all-star spot. It's him, it's Wilyer Abreu, Stephen Kwan, Randy Arozarena, like Wyatt Langford's probably in that group. Um,
Well, you're slowing down here, which tells me
yeah,
that the
so I
list is
mean,
getting a little shorter.
right? Like what Springer has done is really incredible, and I think what he needs to do is keep getting on base. Like he's walking a ton right now, and the homers aren't like up there with the Byron Buxtons or the Randy or sorry the Kerry Carpenters or the Willie Abreu's. Like he's not kind of approaching double digits yet, but what he has done is like he's got a 404 OBP right now. He's hitting for enough power, like the five homers. He's got nine doubles on the year. He's got a triple. Like I think he's just, it's tough to maintain this level of production. But I think like the walking is a really good sign. Obviously the strikeouts are up a little bit more, but that's kind of something that we said might be needed for him to, we obviously Ben Nicholson Smith wrote that piece about him getting his A swing off a lot more often, which, probably does come with a little bit more swing and miss, so a little bit more strikeouts. I think you see the walking, the OBP up. If he can kind of at least kind of keep that on base floor, um, I think he's going to be an all-star, probably.
I think so. Wouldn't that be something? I mean, he was so unwatchable the last year, and even going back to almost 2 years, right? Was he? You're gonna have to remind me here. Last All-Star appearance. He was an All-Star with the Blue Jays. Was it in 21? Was it in 22? It wasn't 22, I don't believe.
It was 22.
Was it 22?
Yeah.
So he's an All-Star in 22. 2023 goes poorly. 2024 goes miserably. And 2025 he's back at an All-Star. Like, what a turnaround. This is a guy that we talked about getting cut,
Yeah.
not being part of the team by June 1st. This guy was on, Jose Abreu watch, and now he's on Aaron Judge. Well, maybe not Aaron Judge watch, but he's on All-Star watch.
Yeah. It's
I
it, it's
love it.
incredible. He's leading the team in F4 right now. Um, he's like kind of just been like the most important Blue Jay so far
Well,
this
let's
year.
let's 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 have a very quick little sidebar discussion here.
Is it about him being the leadoff hitter? Because he should be the leadoff hitter.
Well, that wasn't what I was going to go for, but that is something that should be the case. Where would you rank that in terms of the biggest stories of the Blue Jays season through a month and a half?
Yeah. I mean, are we talking like purely on field?
let's let's
Like,
say
because biggest stories of the Blue Jay season, number one is the
Vlad.
Vlad extension. Um, number two, it might be George Springer.
And probably is. He's
Like,
been
I think
he's the
Hoffman,
he is the piece that has, connected the puzzle. He's been the final piece of the puzzle, right?
yeah.
He's just completed the picture, and he's makes this lineup so much better. Yes, Hoffman, I think, is a huge part of the story. I think that's a good point. But I think even like over the last, week and a half, his struggles have kind of put a damper, put a bit of a pause, whatever you want to say. Has maybe changed the perception, has changed the dynamic of that story or whatever. Um, George Springer right now, like we just had a discussion about 2025 George Springer representing the Blue Jays at the MLB All-Star game.
I mean, it's still May 12th, so the All-Star game is still months away at this point. But right now, if you're like, if they were to be naming the American League All-Star team, like, I think you're looking at George Springer, you're looking at Jeff Hoffman, and, Vlad, he's been there four straight times, so he's probably there again. But it would be close, I think, on Vlad just based on what, uh, what like Tyler Soderstrom and Spencer Torkelson have been doing. What a weird sentence to say, um, but I think like Springer and Hoffman are probably the two all stars right now.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
We can move on here. A little bit of an interruption from the powers that be with a hailstorm, little power outage that don't want George Springer All-Star conversation. So we can kind of keep it moving here. Some more news around the Blue Jays. Obviously, it's been a big season for Blue Jays prospects. Trey, Yesavage, and Arjun, Nimmala, of course, have gotten much love this year, and they are going to get some more as they both slide up in Baseball America and MLB Pipeline's top 100 rankings. Nimmala obviously, kind of creeping into that top 60 range for what he's done to begin the season. And I mean, it kind of makes sense. I think we were talking about him being up there towards the top 50 by the end of the year. And of course, Yesavage, kind of more in the back end for Baseball America and into the 70s for MLB Pipeline. Um, hey, it's good to see some progress for those guys and kind of getting the recognition.
For sure. Yeah, MLB Pipeline talked about they released an article in conjunction, of course, with their updated prospect rankings. And Arjun Nimmala, I believe, was third or fourth or fifth in terms of biggest risers among all of the top 100 guys. He's really taken an enormous step, obviously, which we've discussed at length, of course. I don't think we've gone an episode or two without discussing the growth that has been Arjun Nimmala and his absolutely torturous efforts in the Northwest League. Yeah, he's been excellent. The power's been continuing to demonstrate itself. He's continuing to rake. Didn't he? He homered, I believe, if not yesterday, just a couple days ago, to reassert his lead in the league, if I recall correctly,
He's currently
in
tied with
homers.
Adrian Pinto and Lazaro Montez of the Mariners for the Northwest League with
So
seven.
that's pretty good. I mean, things are going well for Pinto, or excuse me, for Mel. Although Pinto
Pinto
also
too. He
really
just
done
got
well.
named the Northwest League Prospect or Player of the Week. So
Yeah, slip of the tongue, but
I think there's
nevertheless,
there's
couple good stories.
a guy moving up to Double A soon. Will be Pinto.
I, I'd say so. And then the Savage too getting some love as well. I don't know if you saw it, but Foolish Baseball on Twitter obviously goes without saying. I mean, we don't need to introduce him, but he gave you Savage some love too. Kind of pointed something interesting out about him, about kind of his pitch profile. But regardless, another guy with a very interesting makeup that he seemed to like. But just as a whole, the fact that after so many whiffs. You got two first round picks right now that are having a lot of success. That's really compelling. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at obviously Baseball America is kind of the one that I read more often than MLB Pipeline. But you look at They're top 100 right now, and you're soon probably going to see guys graduating. Roki Sasaki, Christian Campbell, Jackson Jobe will all be off that list soon. Jordan Lawler just got called off today, so he'll be moved off soon. And then guys obviously at the back end always move down and everything like that. So I think by the time that we're at Baseball America's like year end update, we'll see at least four, maybe five Blue Jays prospects because whoever they pick eighth will more than likely end up kind of amongst that group.
It looks like the Jays.
Unless you want to, and Cal Steven, if you want a fifth, Cal Steven, Gage Stanifer, guys who, could kind of creep their way in there.
It's suddenly looking like the Jays farm system maybe not so garbage after all. It's
Well,
it's certainly better than it's looked over the last year and a half or so.
yeah, it's really interesting, and I think the systems like kind of always had like kind of that sneaky little bit of depth, right? Like the Davis Schneiders, the Addison Bargers, those kind of guys. Even at the lower levels, like I think Pinto's another good example of like a guy who's like a depth prospect that'll never be a top 100, but like still fairly kind of intriguing enough. So like the depth has been okay, and they've just kind of lacked like that top end talent. And now that top end talent is starting to come through with the Savages, the Nimmalas, the Cal Stevens, Ricky Tiedemann, hopefully when he's back. Landon Marudis is a guy who's back pitching now in the FCL. So I think that there is a pretty big jump coming for the Jays system in the next couple of years, especially as they add the eighth overall pick this year, which of course, does convey through the rest of the rounds. So good time for the Blue Jays farm system this year.
You know, I think I said it after they lost the Angel series. I was so out on these Jays. And I was like, it's clearly something's wrong. Clearly something needs to change. And of course, you win four baseball games, and all of a sudden, all ills are cured. But what if this isn't the core that gets it done, but that wave of talent we were promised all of a sudden shows up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of see the pieces of like the next good Blue Jays team, right? And this team, they they have a shot at making the playoffs, right? Like obviously, it's tough when you kind of have the ups and the downs that they have, where you look like one of the worst teams in baseball as you lose to the Angels, and then you bounce back and you beat one of the better teams in the American League this year in the Mariners. Like their playoff odds are at 34% right now, but on Fangraphs. Um, but at least what they have done is shown like that there is at least some competitive pieces long term, right? Like I mean, if you're going to build out like the 2027 Blue Jays right now based on who is currently on the roster, it's like Vlad Jimenez, Nimmala, Barger,
There's a
Yesavage, Steven Stanifer,
It's a lot of youth,
Tiedemann,
right? You can
yeah,
hear the names you're rhyming off. It's all youth. It's
Varsho.
all it's all new blood. And it's a team like, is it crazy to say that the Jays are maybe on the bottom part of the roller coaster and things are maybe, is it crazy to say that?
Imagine saying that 4 years ago that 2025 would be the bottom of the roller coaster.
Well, technically 2024 is the bottom of the roller
Well,
coaster.
yes, that is that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, interesting week ahead for them. They've got the Rays and the Tigers. Obviously, the Tigers have been excellent, but luckily for the Blue Jays, you miss Scooble. And the Rays, in division matchups, the Rays are the Rays. They're of course 18 and 22, haven't been playing very good at all recently. They have I think you kind of look at their lineup, it's like Jonathan Aranda has kind of been their their aircraft carrier this year, which is obviously never, it's probably not
He's
what they
probably
were
not
hoping for.
supposed to be that
Yes.
kind of guy.
Yes. Um anything you're watching for specifically this week going forward?
Well, that Tiger series you got circled, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
you got to win the in division stuff. But the Tigers one's going to be similar to this Mariners one. And the Jays just swept the Mariners, and I'm not thinking that the Jays are going to be sweeping the Tigers. But, and big ol' but, that's a huge series. Obviously, it'll be mid-May, you'll be kind of in that discussion of if you are going to be making a serious run at being a like you want to be around kind of the May 2-4 weekend. You want to know who you are. and we don't know who the Blue Jays are. And this week, I actually feel is a pretty particularly important week, specifically that Tiger series. If you can beat the Mariners, you can have a competitive series against the Rays and beat the Tigers. That's a team that's legit, which is again another thing that could you imagine in 2020 saying that? Um, like this is a team that has shown upside, and this is a week that they can again show the best version of themselves.
Yeah, it's if they can come out of the week over 500, like that's a huge win, I
That's
think.
an enormous one, and it
Yeah.
would push the Jays over 500 on the season, right? So,
Yeah, that's
in
what
and
I
of
yeah, that's
itself,
kind of what I meant. Yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I just pulled up like the probable starters for the week and that Tiger series, it's Francis, Urania, and Barrios against those Tigers who have been swinging it really well and obviously they've been getting some pretty good pitching too. So it'll be interesting to see. They surprised us this week and I think you kind of hope that they kind of keep it riding. Um Player to watch this week, I think it's got to be Barger. See how he kind of
I think this is, he's riding a hot week. They probably don't want this day off.
yeah,
But
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
If Barger can keep it rolling, that's gonna really change the complexion of this Blue Jays team.
A Vladdy week too would be nice. Obviously, he kind of struggled against the Mariners, but he was pretty okay against the Angels, I guess. So, um, kind of waiting on that Vladdy stretch that we got last year. That we kind of got. I guess it was kind of more in June than in May, but would be nice. And hopefully Santander is back and hitting because he was kind of coming around a little bit as well. So
Bats maybe coming alive. Could be. It's possible.
you would certainly hope that the bats are more of what they were this weekend than what they were in the end of April, beginning of May. Well, you got any other last minute thoughts before we run?
I don't think so. I think I'm ready for some Blue Jays baseball this week.
Yes. Well, hope you enjoy the rest of the off day. That is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter. And the pod is at BEB_pod. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the games this week.